So hi there, my name is Nokuba. Before we dive into WeShare itself, I think we should just first understand what WeShare is. So WeShare is basically like an expense tracker for students. It tracks your expenses and also the expenses you have on behalf of other students and also vice versa. So basically, if I make a payment, let's say for example I buy lunch, that expense will be tracked, and then also if I buy lunch for my friends, that expense will also be tracked, and then if my friend buys lunch for me, that expense or their expense will be tracked. So that's basically we share an expense tracker for students. Okay, so for number one, it says you need to show that you use the computer technology to conduct your research. So basically, throughout the project, I had some technologies and also I would say some browsers that I utilized in order to help run and build the entire WeShare project. So for the browser I used Brave browser. It's actually based off Chrome, but it has quite the aggressive ad blocker. It's quite good if you don't want to keep being disturbed by pop-up ads or whatever from the internet. And then for the tech stack, it was basically just Java. And then I used CSS for some styling. And then an IDE which I preferred was IntelliJ IDEA, which is quite user friendly for me. And then of course HTML5, and then we also had a database so that it will always keep track. We store a student's expenses in a database so that they can always retrieve and see who they owe, or how much are they owed by the person maybe who they paid for on their behalf. So that's basically it. Okay, so on to number two. So to show that I planned and documented my research, I have this some sort of a flow on how the entire application would work. So the user or the student would firstly sign up or log in using their respective email, and then they will log in going to this I would say a dashboard or some sort of a home page. So this dashboard here would then show the expenses of that specific student. So if a student owes someone or has an expense, for example, if they bought lunch during lunchtime, that expense will be added here. And then if you go to another tab now, which is the payment requests sent. So with this payment request sent, once it comes to this page of payment requests sent, it will show you the people who owe you. If, for example, you paid lunch on behalf of another student, it will show you here in this page that a particular student owes you this amount of money because you paid for them lunch. And then here on another tab, which is the payment request received. Payment request received. So here it will show you who you actually owe. If you were on the receiving end of a student paying for you, um, uh, again, if they paid for you lunch, making an example, if they paid lunch for you, it will show you on this tab that you actually owe a particular student lunch money, which that student used on your behalf. So this is where it will show that you owe a particular student or students, and then this is where it will show the students who actually owe you, And then this is where it will actually show you your expenses, all of them. So even here, when a student would capture like an expense, uh, you have the ability to add an expense, a new expense, as they are shown here in the dashboard, and then it will total everything, and then it will oh sorry, for example here, as you can see, this student has an expense of airtime. It also specifies the date of this expense, when it was created, and then it will also specify the amount which the student spent on this particular expense. And then this would be the net expense, which would be the total. So it will just calculate your total expenses and then just give you the grand total expense here. And then here it also shows you on how you can also add a new expense. If you went to dinner with your friends, or you went for lunch with your friends, you can also describe that, okay, I went to dinner with my friends on this particular date, and this is how much I spent. So that amount you spent, it would then cater for everything, in terms of also paying on behalf of your friends and also your expenses included. And then you add that particular expense. As you can see here, after adding it, dinner, it will then show on your dashboard. To the next one. Okay, so for number 3, uh, it says you need to show that you use the internet to conduct your research. So throughout the project, the duration of the project, the internet was my best friend. Um, uh, More so because I had to use like a web browser in order to run my live server when I'm running my application. It would then need to relay whatever it's relaying onto the browser. And then, as I have mentioned, I was using Brave, since it's quite easy to use, it's user friendly. It's also based on Chrome, and then also it has a very aggressive ad blocker. So I was frequent in using the Brave browser, in terms when I'm running my project and just seeing the interface and seeing it on how it actually responds. Does it actually work? So I was using the internet frequently in the duration of my project. Okay, so for number 4, I need to show that I used computer technology to present my research. So I'm currently presenting on Chrome. I'm using what you call the teller for Chrome, which is used for when you can just screen record and then also share your screen while also showing your face at the bottom. And then I'm using Canva for slides. As you can see here on Chrome, this is what I'm using for presenting, which I would think would align with what is being required at the moment. So for number 5, it says I need to show that I researched the tools available for web dev for this website development project. So before I dive into any project, I do my research on all the tools that I'll actually need for that project. So for this project, I knew that for that front end rendering, I need HTML and CSS. So I did deep research on both, on how I can work, on how I can utilize them to work hand in hand with the backend part of things, which would be Java in this case, because for Java I use it for starting the server so that I can actually run my entire project. So Java for backend, so that I can establish that MVC pattern, which would guarantee like that need communication between the backend part of things and also the front end part of things, which would be HTML and CSS. So number 6, it needs me to demonstrate an understanding of the available web browser plugins. So, plugins are quite essential if you want to give your browser that added or extra functionality. Some extensions are quite powerful and quite useful. So, as you can see here, I took a screenshot of the extensions which I'm currently using on my Chrome side, on my Chrome browser. So the extension I'm currently using right now is the Teller one, Teller for Chrome. I'm currently using it right now because I'm doing this screen recording using this very powerful extension. And I also have this quite famous extension which is called Google Docs Offline. So you can edit, create, and view your documents without internet access. So extensions are just there to make your life easier, uh, to reduce all of those unnecessary complications which you would, I would say, get if you were to download an app which is dedicated for editing, creating, and viewing documents. You would find that that particular app needs an internet connection. But now, if you have it just as a plugin, you can just edit, create, and view your documents all without internet access. And then also this Teller for Chrome, it's quite efficient because I don't have to pay any subscription amount. It's free. It's a plugin. I just enable it and it's up and running. So browser plugins are quite important, and I'm quite fond of. So number seven, I should motivate my choice of an HTML editor and other website design or maintenance tools. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm quite fond, or I'm quite familiar or used to using IntelliJ IDEA as my primary IDE or design or maintenance tool. So since I also mentioned that for my tech stack, it's basically for front end, it's HTML and CSS, and then for back end and that server side rendering is mainly Java. So also IntelliJ is quite, it leans towards the Java side. So I was like, I might as well just use IntelliJ IDEA. And then also they have the perfect extensions or plugins which will help you in debugging your HTML code and everything. So I think choosing IntelliJ IDEA was the best choice for me. Um, uh, Seeing how I'm already used to coding in that particular IDEA.
I will be doing the cost benefit analysis. It is important to make a cost benefit analysis to make informed project decisions by identifying and evaluating all relevant cost and benefits of your project. So it also ensures the project's financial viability and strategic planning with achievable goals. So these are parts of cost benefit analysis that helps us to evaluate the financial viability and potential outcomes of the project. So these components includes the cost estimate, time estimate, the impact analysis, and work element identification. Okay, so now the cost estimate, its purpose is to help us understand the financial implications in evaluating the project viability and also making those informed decisions about the project, and also to give us an insight about the timeline and assessing any risk that may be associated with the project, and to prioritize the project, and also to measure the performance during the development of the project, and also transparency and accountability. Okay, and by analyzing the requirements on each component of the project cost estimate, we can precisely project the cost associated with these components when testing, deploying, and hosting the server side, which is rendering, the server-side rendering, which was also part of our project requirements. So the server-side rendering might use some cost on hosting the services depending on the server requirements and traffic cost. But by estimation, when we're doing the development of these, or when we're testing these components, the authentication and the server side, we could even come up to cost almost 1,000 or more than that. So that is what it would cost us when we are doing this analysis or estimates under the cost. So, but this project that we developed did not cost us anything. So everything was tested for free. We did not incur any expenses on this side. Okay. And also, again, we did the testing of the interfaces, which also didn't cost us anything. So we realized that implementation and testing of these interfaces to the other components, integration efforts, was also important for seamless functionality, and to ensure that this was accounted for in our cost projection. But we did not incur any cost. All these components developed were tested for free and no expenses on our side. Okay. And we also figured that there will be some costs, some additional cost or potential escalation of cost associated with assistance from other resources or people while collaboration towards the completion of the project. So, or just to enhance the efficiency of the project. But we know that if we did that, it could introduce additional coordinates efforts or more resources, which will reflect on our cost projection. But we did not receive any assistance, or we did not use any sources or resources from the outside. So we did not ask any help from other people. So there were no additional cost towards this project. Okay. Because there were no outsourcing of any information or assistance from the outside. Okay. And the time estimate cost, which is basically how long it took, or how long it took for us to complete the project. But the whole project took 3 weeks to complete, and in that 3 weeks we had 1 week for planning, and the testing of the interfaces and the server side and the client side was done every time after completing or adding a new feature in the project. But the project overall, it took 3 weeks. It was an iteration for 3 weeks to complete. So we also discussed the late delivery element of work. So we discussed the impact of late delivery, or the effect that or the impact that late deliveries on the components, on how it can project to our timeline being pushed, or increase the expenses incurred, or work quality compromised, even the satisfaction of our project, if it would satisfy the client. So we did discuss that. So understanding this effect, it did help us to reduce the risk and manage the project schedules effectively. Thank you.
Good day, my name is Andile, and I will be taking you through the WeShare demo. So what we have right now is the WeShare login page, which is basically a form that takes in your email, and then you can press the button to actually log in. So what WeShare is basically is an application that allows people to share expenses and be able to share meals with their friends, or anything that might need to be splitted. So you log in with student one, and as you log in, you can see that it lands you on the expenses page, which shows a table with a list of all your expenses, and there are hyperlinks at the top that can navigate you from different tabs. And there's also a button or a link that sends you to creating a new expense. And with the table, you can see that it has a total of 300 rands, which is the list of expenses that the user have when it is netted, or the sum of the expenses. And then you look at the payment request sent page, which contains a list of all the users who owe that particular user. In this case, student one is owed by student two and student three, and the amount that he is owed is 100 rand. And then the people who the student owes is not there because the student does not owe anyone as of yet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new expense, and we're going to give the expense a description, a date, and an amount. So we're going to choose dinner. No, let's just choose breakfast because we already have dinner. And then we're going to enter a date. The date needs to be dates that happened in the past, because you are basically recording an expense, and you can't have a dates that happened in the future or something that's happening now. So we enter the date, and then we enter the amount. The amount is 100 in our case, and then we click on submit. And once we've submitted, we can be able to see our expense, and the expense is the name breakfast, and you can also see that the total has also increased. And then from there, good day, my name is Andile, and now I'll be taking you through the WeShare demo. So the expense, we can be able to see it, and you can see that the name is breakfast, and the amount is 400. So now what we're going to do is look into the actual expense itself, and then you can see that it has a date, it has a description, and it has amount in a table format. And for the form that exists within that payment, within that expense, actually is the payment request form, which allows you to basically split the bill with someone else that you have nominated to pay you. So in this case, the date should actually be a future date, which is the time or the amount of days that you expect the payment to be settled. So once you create a payment request, it creates a table that shows all the people who owe the person and all the details of that payment request. And it also updates the table on the payment request sent tab for breakfast. As you can see, the amount has also increased. And then we can also see that on the first row, the payment had existed and was paid. So that's why the net amount is 150 instead of 250. And then we can also see that the payment request has also been made. So now we're going to log out and log back in as student 2 to see any payment request. The first thing you notice when you log in as student 2 is that there are also expenses that exist for that specific user, and the user has not asked anyone to pay them, so that is their own expense. The user has not sent any request. As you can see, there is no table. From what we can see is a table that has 2 rows, one where the user has already paid that payment request, and the second one is the one that we just sent to that user to be able to pay. So you click on the pay button, and the total unpaid amount decreases to 0, and that expense is updated on the table for your expenses, and it becomes a part of your expense. As you can see, the total expenses have also increased by a matter of 50 rands, which is the same amount that the student 1 and student 2 had agreed on, that student 2 pay student 1 50 rands, and that will be their expense. And we can also see that there's other expenses like movies and lunch, and that's basically WeShare in a nutshell. Thank you.
So here are the tools we used in this project. We used Chrome browser. Chrome browser, as we used it like to test our layout and design, and also to debug our our project. Like when you're it's like it serves as a runtime environment. We used it like to the purpose of this plot of using Chrome browser, it was to interpret like your HTML layout and the CSS, and then how the Java controls controller on how to control like the movements around around our web application. And also we used HTML, which is a we used HTML5, by the way. It's a markup language. It's a standard like markup language for creating like your web pages and your web application. And also we used another tool called CSS cascading style sheet. CSS is used to style like your HTML in your web pages. It controls like your layout, appearance, and design of your project. You can style it like in many ways, like maybe changing colors. You want your animations there. Yeah, that is. And also we followed the MVC architecture, which is like model view control architecture. The purpose of MVC design pattern, that is it separates the application into three main components, like mainly your model, your view, your controller. Your model represents like the data and the business logic of the application, and then the view represents like the presentation layer of your application, and the controller acts as an intermediary between your model and your view. Is like it allows you to manipulate like HTML and CSS user interactions, like when you click and input and then perform calculations and fetch data from our server from our servers and much more.